Welcome back to Definitely Not Definitive. I'm Ken.
And I'm Bethany.
And we're just a legendary couple in love that loves react to some League of Legends.
Ooh, we're legendary.
Yeah. So today we're continuing our, dive into characters and doing some lore for Pantheon and some special interactions from him. Switching up from the voice lines, doing something like where we can see like the interactions, like specifically who he's talking to when he says these lines. Someone has recommended that, so we're, trying that out. We like to switch things up every now and then.
Yeah, we do.
If you want all our League of Legends reactions, check out the description of this video. We got a playlist there for you.
But wait, it's League of Legends, which means we got a drink.
We do. La vie en League.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.
Hello everyone and welcome to the long-awaited video where we cover the full story of the new Pantheon. On this channel we have a little bit of a soft spot for Targonians, because every single time we get a Targon-related champion, one of two things happens. Either they reveal another massive part of Runeterra's history, or the stories are just really good. Especially if you like the Darkin, Targonian stories reference them way more than you might think. And today's story will be no different. If you have read the old version of Pantheon's story, you are on a good track, because instead of writing an entire new story, Riot just summarized what already happened and they pushed the timeline forward. In fact, all of this highlighted text is the old lore. The rest is a new part that was added to it. So, without further ado, let's jump into the full story of Pantheon.
Yeah.
The story begins with a Targonian called Atreus, named after a star in the constellation of War, known as the Pantheon. Just like many other in his tribe, Atreus trained to join the Raharak, which was an order of elite warriors in the Rakor tribe. Atreus wasn't the strongest or even the most skilled warrior, but he had endurance and determination. And somehow he kept standing up, bloodied and bruised after every battle. In time he found a fierce rival, a fellow recruit called Pylus. But no matter how many times Atreus fell on the stones, he always stood back up. This unrelenting will impressed Pylus, and through the blood they spilled in the training circle, a true brotherhood was born between them. Sometime later, Atreus and Pylus managed to survive a barbarian invasion, while the rest of their patrol died. They sought revenge, and so they turned towards the aspect of the sun to help them. But for some reason, the aspect refused to destroy these trespassers. And Atreus and Pylus swore to capture the power of the aspects themselves by climbing the peak of Mount Targon. Like so many before them, they underestimated how challenging this task would be. When they finally reached the peak, Pylus froze to death, and only Atreus remained to see the skies open before him, making him host to a divine aspect with the power to take his revenge. However, this wasn't a normal ascension. Atreus now wielded a spear and a shield gleaming with celestial might. But it wasn't Atreus who returned back to Rakor, it was the aspect of war itself. The Pantheon. Judging Atreus unworthy, since he was a warrior who kept getting defeated in every battle, the aspect of war didn't lend Atreus its power. Instead, it took Atreus' body into its own control, in order to pursue tasks too great for mortal man. Atreus was still technically alive, but he was cast into the furthest corners of his own mind. As the aspect used his body, Atreus only saw visions, as the aspect traveled the world hunting down the Darkin. Eventually, Pantheon was locked in battle not far from Mount Targon. His opponent was the Darkin Aatrox, who wanted to claim the mountain's peak for himself. Their fight raged into the skies and swept through the armies of men beneath, until the impossible happened. Aatrox's god-killing blade was driven into Pantheon's chest. The blow was so powerful it destroyed the aspect itself, and the constellation of war disappeared from the heavens. But as the aspect faded, Atreus, the man it had considered weak, awoke once more. Impaled on Aatrox's blade, and with the power of the aspect's weapons dimming, Atreus took a breath and spit in Aatrox's face. Aatrox just sneered and left Atreus to die. But hours later, as the crows descended, Atreus did the one thing that defined him. He was bloodied and bruised, but once again, he painfully stood back up. After a lifetime of defeat, with his will to live and full of anger at being betrayed by the aspects, he wouldn't allow death to claim him like it did war itself. So with the trail of blood behind him, he stumbled back to Rakor. Back in Rakor, Atreus recovered in Pylus' home, healed by Ayula, Pylus' wife who was now a widow. It was there that Atreus realized he had spent his entire life looking up to the stars, but he never considered what's beneath. Unlike gods, mortals fight because they must. They know that death is certain for them. In fact, barbarian invaders now threaten the Rakor's northern settlements, including Ayula's farm. So a couple of months later, when he finally recovered, Atreus picked up his dull spear and he set out to end the scourge himself. But when he arrived, he found his sworn enemies already under siege. He knew from their cries and from the overwhelming stench of blood that they faced Aatrox, and everything suddenly made sense. The reason why the barbarians attacked Targon and why the aspect of the sun refused to destroy them was because they were driven here by Aatrox. And even though Atreus still saw them as his enemies, they were much like the Rakor, mortals who suffered in the conflicts between greater powers. Atreus now felt cold rage at both the Darkin and the Aspects. They were no different. They were the problem. Atreus put himself between the barbarians and Aatrox. Recognizing the battered shield and spear of the fallen Aspect, Aatrox mocked him. Without the Pantheon's power, Atreus was no one. But even though Aatrox's blows cast him to his knees, upon hearing the cries of the people around him, Atreus' own will reignited the Aspect spear, and with a mighty leap, he struck a blow that severed the Darkin's sword arm. Both the blade and the Darkin fell to the ground. Only Atreus still stood, and watched his namesake star blaze back into life in the heavens. Though he often yearns to return to Ayula's farm, Atreus vowed that day to stand against Aspects, Ascended, demons, and any who wield power so great it can only destroy. Forsaking his own name, he became a new Pantheon. The Aspects' weapons fueled by the will to fight that can only exist in the face of death. For with the divine Pantheon gone, war must be reborn in men. This was Pantheon's new bio, but before we have a look at the short story that follows, let me quickly mention a couple of things to remember. First of all, the old Pantheon stories that involved Aurelian are still canon. The Twin Dawns, the story where a female Pantheon controlled Aurelian's soul, is still real. Pantheon, as in the aspect of war, chose its vessels just like the other aspects did. So when one of Pantheon's vessels died, it simply chose a new one. That part is still true. But as we mentioned, this time the Ascension was different, because instead of turning Atreus into Pantheon's vessel, it didn't trust Atreus. And so Pantheon decided to expose itself and transfer itself into the body instead. So all the past stories with different Pantheons are still real. Only now, in the modern days, the aspect of war died, and so we can't expect any new Pantheons to follow. This brings up the question, what is happening to Aurelian's soul now? Pantheon was the aspect that held him on a leash, but unless the other aspects can also hold him at bay. For example, we know that Zoe likes to toy with him too. That leash was now broken, and so Aurelian's soul might be free now. Also, a fun fact confirmed by Riot. Atreus is currently wielding the Aegis of Zeonia, a shield used by the previous vessel of the aspect of war. Lastly, I need to confess. I quickly read this story when I was still on our honeymoon, and I decided to tweet about it right after. However, I made an absolute fool of myself, because I thought that the story mentions that Aatrox's blade used to be part of his arm. You know, just like Demon Blade Tryndamere. But I didn't know that in order for that to be true, it would have to be spelled sword arm with a dash. If it is spelled without the dash, it means that it was his arm that was used for wielding the sword. Anyway, I wish that Aatrox used to have a sword instead of his arm. That would have made him even cooler. And it would perfectly fit the theme of the Darkin using blood magic to morph their bodies. Hashtag sword arm. The short story. Pantheon currently has 2 short stories. The first one is just an updated version of the old short story. It didn't change at all, apart from the fact that when the story talks about Pantheon, it is now correctly describing his updated appearance. In short, it's a story where Pantheon, as in the aspect of war when it was still alive, takes on a group of mercenaries heading towards Targon. But we are interested in the second short story. That one was newly released on the universe last week. So, let's get on it. This story happens after the death of the aspect of war, and after Atreus decided to be the new Pantheon that fight for mankind. The story begins with Pantheon falling from the skies, burning with celestial magic. He landed in Nerimazeth, a very special place to all lore fanatics, because it is here where the first prototype of the Sun Disk was built, and it was here where the Shurimans tried to create the first Ascended. 50 warriors of the Rahorak army, specifically the revered Solari, marched for 3 weeks to get here. Just like Pantheon, they were here to investigate a power that grew, while their own waned. As Pantheon explained, Shurima was born in these ruins, because it was here that the Ascended that were meant to protect the Empire were created. However, these Ascended God Warriors outlived the Empire, and slowly they were driven mad by long centuries of conflict, becoming darkened and laying waste to the world before being contained. But as Pantheon knows, not all Darkin were contained, and some still live on. With that, a couple of spears flew by Pantheon's helm, as the Rahorak unleashed their full might with a battle cry. But in response, a blast of magic cleared the spears from the sky and carved a path of destruction through the ruins. Once the dust settled, Pantheon saw it, the reason why he was here. A broken creature unlike any Ascended he had seen before, a shattered god that has claimed this fallen city and would see it rise again. The Rahorak realized they were facing a god warrior, and suddenly their morale quickly dropped. They couldn't defeat it, but Pantheon stepped forward. He was determined to show them how a god dies.
Nice.
With that, he charged towards the creature, and his spear was ablaze with celestial magic once more. He threw the spear at the enemy, and it unleashed another blast from its broken form. But unlike the Rahorak spears, Pantheon's weapon wasn't burned away in the air. Instead, it streaked like a comet at the Ascended, casting it to the earth. Pantheon looked around, and he saw a Rahorak warrior cradling the body of her fallen friend. Her own arm has been scorched by magic, where she tried to shield her friend from the attack. She looked at Pantheon, and out of desperation, she asked him if he was an aspect. She wanted to know if Pantheon can save her and her friend. All around Pantheon, the Rahorak lines were broken, along with their will to fight. Pantheon didn't answer that question as the spear flew back into his hand. The Ascended left no blood on the spear, because its form had no flesh. It was only magic and stone. Pantheon wanted to tell her his real name, that he too was once a Rahorak warrior, but that man was dead now. He died on Targon's Peak, along with his brother Pylus, slain by the Pantheon and by his own failures. Instead, Pantheon turned towards the creature again. He shouted at the Rahorak that they must fight, that all of them must. The city around them was now on fire, as the Ascended's magic refused to fade. Pantheon started running towards the Ascended, as even more blasts of magic flew around. The ruins of the city crumbled down, and the Rahorak disappeared in dust. With every step, Pantheon kept yelling louder and louder that they simply must fight. When he finally got in range, he started slashing into the Ascended, cutting across the broken stone that boasts instead of a face. More blasts crashed into his shield, pushing him backward, and eventually Pantheon's feet dig into the dirt, as he struggled to hold the rage-filled magic that kept beating into him. Pantheon leaned into it, and the magic started deflecting wildly in every direction, cutting through the ruins, the sky, and through the Rahorak that still cowered beneath both. Pantheon was reaching his limits, and from the look in his eyes he realized the creature knew it as well. Suddenly, Pantheon's spear dimmed, and his helmet fell from his head. Spitting blood into the dirt, Pantheon saw that one Rahorak warrior framed by smoke in all the chaos. She looked back at him, and for the first time, she didn't see an aspect. She saw a man. A simple man just like all of them. Pantheon wondered if she knew who he really was, because her eyes were no longer full of pleading to the gods. They were full of determination. Pantheon noticed the light grow on her face, as the creature gathered power for one more blast. But without hesitation, even though her arm was burnt and her friend laid still, the warrior picked up her shield as she stumbled towards Pantheon to face death. As the light grew brighter, Pantheon asked her about her name. Assos, she replied firmly as the blast burned everything away. Suddenly, there was no more power, no more aspect, and where Assos once stood, there was only Pantheon's memory. Pantheon knew the length of the woman's sacrifice. She knew she wouldn't survive, but she fought anyway. The power of her will was greater than the stars, and much greater than Pantheon's will, or even the weapons that kept him alive. Pantheon wouldn't let this sacrifice fall in vain, and as he struggled to get back to his feet, he saw other Rahorak emerging from cover. They all stood together now. They stood together as men, because before their courage, the gods are nothing. Pantheon shouted the name Assos into the ruins, and the Rahorak replied the same. Though he was broken, and though the god was dead, Pantheon was set ablaze by the power of will once more. He was called to battle, as the Rahorak threw their spears again, and the Atreus star of the Pantheon constellation blazed in the sky. Although that's it for Pantheon's story, before I leave you, let me mention something you should know about. Although the story doesn't straight up say it, I am 99% sure that the creature from this story is actually Zerath. Everything lines up with this theory. The creature had no flesh. It was nothing but magic and stone. Of course, the stone would be the sarcophagus. Also, when Pantheon slashes at his face, he hit a stone where the face should have been. Also, the creature had no weapons, it only used magic. And on top of that, Pantheon mentioned that he had never seen an Ascended like this one. That would be because Zerath was made in an extremely unique way. No other Ascended come even close to him. The final hint is that the story said that the creature claimed Ner Mazeth for itself, and it wanted to raise it from the ruins and rule it. This is exactly what Zerath wants. He is slowly rebuilding and conquering cities around the capital, so he can slowly overtake the Empire. I know, this isn't as exciting as confirming a new Darkin, but hey, I'm sure we can figure out other Darkin theories.
Battle is a dance, and the fortunate find their partner.
Being war itself, that's a fitting one.
Aatrox has slaughtered gods, but now he faces a man.
Makes me think of Lord of the Rings.
Aatrox,
I'm not
the
a man.
world ender, but from death comes life. The power you sought has destroyed you, Aatrox. You will find no other end. Aatrox would drown the world in blood just to stain the heavens.
I think that's gonna be the next guy we check out, Aatrox.
You sought to become a god, and you were made their pet. I am not the Pantheon you knew, creature. I am Atreus, a mortal, about to slay a dragon.
He does not like
I
confidence.
once
Cool
trusted
looking
my
dragon.
destiny
Yeah.
to the stars, dragon. Now I trust in steel. Darkin or aspect, it does not matter.
You'll all die by my blade.
Sight. The blows of gods cannot shatter the world if they strike me instead. Gods need slaves, and they found you.
Oh,
The Lunari do not need a god. They need a leader. Is this a god or a rag? You preach movement while anchoring our souls. Cain, either the weapon is redundant or you are. While you bow to the sun, my spear finds your neck.
okay.
Aggressive.
Hide
Yeah.
behind your faith, Solari, and the robes of your priests.
I can see him. He hates the gods. He also hates faith.
Aspect and armor, you are more resilient than you know. Our destiny is to fight, and only the bravest do not refuse it. I understand this, Lunari. If only your kind could see what you see, Soraka, they would weep for you, as you weep for us. If it isn't the aspect everyone used to like. You call yourself the aspect of the protector, but now the one in need is you.
This guy's got some good trash talk.
Yeah, he does.
Earned my spear with my brother's dying breath.
Ooh.
How did you earn yours, Demacian? I
Dark.
have faced many self-proclaimed gods. The worst was
too
the
adorable.
face of a child.
So you want to dance it out?
Why do you fight? We bleed into the same earth, and bleed we must. Face me. How many hosts must I kill, Darkin? The Darkin's final words are not their own, but the cries of humanity.
Ooh.
The stars lie. All things end
He is such a glass half empty kind of guy.
Mortality can only be severed by the spear's edge. Return home on your shield.
Oh, it just falls on top of him.
How you die is who you are. Stand up. Face me again.
That was that assassin, that one
Keep fighting.
cinematic we saw that we really liked.
I will remember your name and shout it to the heavens. Glory fades into bloodstains.
Okay then.
How many times must I die before I learn to live? Stand back up and never be defeated.
You have the will.
Died. The man lives. I will fall at least one more time. I will not surrender. The beyond can have me when I am done. The heavens do not fear me because I am a god. They fear me because I am a man. They are called gods, but when they die, you cannot hear their howls above the wind. I fight until the blood takes the spear from my grasp, until I can only crawl. And even then, you will not defeat me. Even then, I will spit in your face.
Yeah, it pumps you up.
Yeah.
Be legend. Brother to warriors resting beneath wheat. Son of battles 1,000 times lost. I know who I am, and I will show the gods what I can become.
He shouts out at the gods like with his spear.
My name is Soldier. By my spear, they will know war. Shields defend hearts, both yours and those beside you. A dragon looms, its wings beating the song of battle, calling us to war.
This is different, like skin that he has, Dragon Slayer.
Ends the age of dragons. We cry out to the heavens, and they answer in wind and flame. I will turn the dragon's power against them, drive it deep beneath scale. This I promise. The stars are beyond my reach, and so I grasp my spear and take aim. We must all find our place. Mine is being
moves with the
cast
huff.
down, so I can rise once more. Behind me lies a farm. I wonder if there is bread above the hearth, and if I will ever return. We are privileged to breathe, to taste the air. It is the last gasp of all who have died before us. After every defeat,
Yeah.
I ran
It's beautiful until you said that last part.
mountain until even shame could not keep up. Heavier than my spear
Even shame could not keep
is
up.
the weight of only one life. When I look to the mountain's peak, in my mind, I have already fallen, and so I climb. The man who tastes the venom of gods must spit his words. The twilight of the gods comes each morning when our world shines brighter than the stars. How much further could we march if we were not forced to carry our fears on our backs?
That's a great line.
Yeah.
The mountain before me is not always high. It is not always a mountain. We are caught
Okay.
between Darkin and Aspect, but we will rise up in spite of them. Vengeance is cold. I do not need it on the mountain. No mercy for the strong. Power would be
Cobra Kai, no mercy.
Fight because you must. Spear and shield, a pantheon.
Too bad it doesn't seem that phased by your attack.
Yeah.
Again, into legend.
Why did the guy choose to keep beating up his girl?
Broken. A legion of one.
Unbowed, unbent.
Life was always a war. Do not give up. Strike now. Strike harder. Let fear make you bold. You will not fail if it is worth it. You can only defeat yourself. Echo for eons. Everything or nothing.
Does seem like you're an all or nothing kind of guy.
Fear dulls. Willpower sets my spear alight. Before you fight, you must rise. Between each beat of my heart, I strike.
Drop the mic. What do you call down?
Looks like a dragon egg.
Could have been.
I mean, I don't know if he has the ability to collect eggs on demand, but because
That is his ultimate
he was
ability.
like, "Come to me," and then boom, convenient.
Yay! Breakfast. All right. So I think my favorite part in that was when Pantheon was fighting the aspect or whatever, and he was trying to rally the people around him. And they wouldn't rally around him as he fought. And then it wasn't until like his helmet was removed and they saw that he was a man that one woman stepped up and was like, okay, well, you know, if just a man is willing up to step up to like, you know, the gods and fight them, then I can too. And like, that's what everyone rallied around. And like, I just like that moment, just like that recognition of, because sometimes we like, you know, put people up on pedestals, or we say like, you know, like we shower them with praise and we're just like, oh, but I can't do that. Like, I wish I could do what you do. I think it was another, like, was it, who's the famous like violinist or
Yo-Yo Ma is a cellist.
Cellist. Okay, I think it was Yo-Yo Ma. Someone came up to Yo-Yo Ma and was just like, you know, I would give my life to play as beautifully as you do. And he said, I did. Like, because that's what it takes. And it's like, you know, yes, there is, you know, with a lot of people, you know, there's like, you know, some natural like athletic ability or musical talent, and whatnot. But it's also like, you know, putting in the work. And I like that they saw that, like, all right, once they saw him as just a human being, they were able to believe in themselves.
Yeah, I mean, you referenced Yo-Yo Ma. I also think of like the way people idolize prophets and in religion, and we tend to think that, oh, well, this person wasn't just a person, they were ordained by God. That's how they were able to do such good work, or they weren't really a person, they were a saint, or things like this. But it's like, that allows us to be separated from them, which justifies our lack of effort, which is really the only distinguishing factor in a lot of cases. Like, Jesus to some is the Son of God, and that's great. To others, he's just an incredible man. But I think I find him more impressive as a truly incredible man, speaking good things and trying to put kindness out there, and you know, don't judge others unless you are perfect, and none of us are perfect, so you can't judge. Like, I think I love the idea of him more that way, because then it says, yeah, you can be just as good. You can try to do just as much if you don't look at him as something different than you, but rather someone who put in the effort to do good things. He was able to do all these things as potentially a mere mortal, depending on where your beliefs lie. And to me, that just makes him far more magnificent and far more impressive than if he was somehow specifically and specially ordained by God.
I also thought it was such a cool story that, like, so, like, you know, he starts out Atreus, and he is someone that just like does not give up and just won't quit and keeps getting back up every single time. Made me think of, like, you know, Captain Marvel or whatever in the...
Can do this all day.
Yeah. Well, it's Captain America. I was thinking Captain Marvel with when she kept getting knocked down or whatever in her time, but she kept getting back up. But yeah, Captain America works as too. Like, I can do this all day. When he was just like, when he wasn't Captain America and he was just a regular guy, but like he had that heart, and that's what, like, you know, the doctor saw in him, is like, oh, you should have this kind of power.
And I love that fact that, you know, he never gave up. Like, he was considered unworthy because he kept losing, but that's one perspective, but it completely loses the sight of what makes him so incredible, which is despite that, he got back up every single time. And it's like, you will never win at everything in life. You're gonna fall down. But it's the question of, when you fall down, do you stay down or do you get back up? And like, that's what kind of separates, and that's what puts you on a certain path. Because if you just go like, okay, I lost, I'm a loser, I'm done, then like, that doesn't let you go anywhere from there. But if you say like, hey, I lost at this, I'm going to learn from this and I'm going to get back up. Like, now you can move forward and you've got wisdom and you can be even bigger and better than before.
Yeah, I mean, there was probably like a meme or something like that like had like the different people that like were successful, like, and how many times they had failed before they like gained that success.
Yeah, I love that meme. That goes around all the time.
Yeah,
like, every few months it like travels through social media.
Yeah, so that's always good. And I remember Michael Jordan had a commercial one time when he was talking about like all of his failures. He's like I've missed like, you know, like 127 like game-winning shots or whatever, and like, you know, and all these things that like he had done that like was his failure, but like that's always what drove him so much, was to not fail, like to not want to fail again, and like, you know, to keep believing in yourself that you could make that shot and could could persevere. I don't necessarily know that I like Pantheon, but I like his story, and like I respect his story, and I think it's just got like a lot of good lessons in there. But yeah, it's not necessarily like a character like that. I'm like, do I want to root for Pantheon?
He has a little bit of a chip on his shoulder.
Yes.
But not necessarily undeserved.
Yeah,
and
true.
I do admire his strength.
Yeah.
I do admire his perseverance. He's a little bit negative for me.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to grab a beer with him.
Yeah, I was thinking that as you said that before. I was like, well, what is that like old politics test like? If you're gonna run for president, like people have to want to grab a beer with you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, he wouldn't pass the politic test. Like he doesn't exude that.
No, he's definitely not a politician.
But I admire the heck out of him, arguably more than some politicians. So like, I don't know. He's controversial, but I like him.
Okay, that's well said. What did you think about the interactions we saw this time versus like the voice lines we've done before? It was just kind of like one picture, and it was just like, you know, the voice lines going over, versus this time we saw some of the characters and like what he was saying, like, you know, this is the long walk, the short walk, like this is what he says when he attacks. I was curious what you thought about that.
So I really like the way we did it this time for this character, because I think his journey is one that there's a lot of benefit to the visual. Getting some of the backstory and the lore beforehand, and then seeing his moves, sort of like his strength and his prowess with that mentality that comes through in his words. I mean, like, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember word for word, but that great line about like, we could move so much faster if we weren't forced to carry, you know, all of
our fear on our back or something like that.
All that fear and negativity that we all kind of have to balance in our lives. I was like, wow, he's got a lot of wisdom, and he's incredibly insightful. Yeah. It was a full package this way that I really like. Okay. The creepy one, the super creepy one, Jin. Jin, I kind of liked as the voice lines, only because Jin is so freaky that kind of not having the visual made it scarier to imagine.
Okay.
To imagine the circumstances of this particular line or that line, and hearing like how he repeats the last thing that his victim says.
That's you mix them up now. Fiddlesticks is the last one.
Fiddlesticks, that's what it was. I was like, when you said Jin, I was like, I really don't think that is, but okay. I trust you. Fiddlesticks. So like hearing Fiddlesticks in terms of repeating back the last line of his victim, it was so wonderful to just hear voice lines for that, because my brain exploded into imagination of like, oh my God, if that was the last thing that was said, like, how was that said? And like, what were the circumstances of this? And like, I don't know, like there were like 5 mini movies going on in my head at once as to how this could have played out. And so that was much creepier and really kind of exciting to play with in my brain.
Okay.
And because it's a creepy character, I think my imagination was probably coming up with creepier stuff than what would have been seen. Kind of like how when sex scenes are done on TV or film, and it's like, I mean, sure, there are aspects of it that are sexy, but like if it's not showing me everything and I can kind of like imagine what was happening, that's gonna be way sexier to me based on my preferences than what was the director's preferences that they're enacting on screen. So I think that for that kind of character, there is benefit in that scene.
Okay. Very diplomatic answer. You'll let us know what you thought about this down below in the comments. And if you want all of our League of Legends reactions, go ahead and check out the description of this video. We got playlists there for you. Thanks so much for checking out our reaction for Pantheon's lore and special interactions, but just keep in mind
that our reaction is definitely not definitive.